So I would start with Roberto Viola. As you know, he's leading the DG Connect of the European Commission. And I would start with a quote by Luciano Floridi, which is from Rome too, but he's teaching ethics and philosophy at the Oxford University. And usually he's saying in the speeches lately that Europe left the home keys to Facebook and Google. And now we are trying to awaken, but probably it's too late. Is it too late for Europe, or are we taking finally, harnessing the future?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Riccardo, for this nice question. Let me, first of all, say that I'm very glad to be here. Yesterday I was badly sick, but I said I cannot miss it. I cannot miss it. I feel, for obvious reason, close to Italy, but also for, when you look at my CV, very obvious reason, close to the UK. So, and this is digital, so how I could miss it. So I took plenty of paracetamol and flew from Brussels to Rome, and I'm here. And I think it's a very important event, a very useful event that is preparing a very important competitiveness council that will be combined with the Telecom Council and will be the European Council after the presentation of the package from the European Commission on e-commerce and the new Audiovisual Media Service Directive. So there will be plenty of things to discuss, including, of course, the digital industry package we have already presented on the 18th of April. But this is not because I don't want to answer your question. So first of all, Luciano is a friend, so it's a double pleasure to reply to your question. I think it's fair to say that Europe, especially certain parts of Europe, I would say the UK less than others, but also the UK, did not completely understand the disruptive force of Internet and did not embrace the Internet revolution, and especially the continental part of Europe even resisted to it, and still is resisting somehow. There's an index which is called the Internet Economy Index. The UK has 7% of its economy already fully dependent on the Internet, and by the year 2020 it will be nearly 20%. Italy is 3%, but it's starting to be an important part also of Italy's economy. So Italy and UK live on Internet, as all of us do, and there's no modern society, there's no modern economy without Internet. But Europe has been late. So let me compare it with football, and I say something that normally my German commissioner looks at me not so happy, but then when I explain it becomes happy, and you will understand why. When Italy won the World Cup in 2006, has beaten Germany at home. And Germany, okay, didn't take it so lightly, but then started from the football schools, didn't start hiring champions from all over the world, really built up a very strong basis for the future. And in 10 years, Germany has won the World Cup. This is what Europe should do. I mean, if Europe starts to resist to the Internet revolution, hyper-regulate the Internet, block innovation, start not to invest in young and dynamic startups, in research and development, will not make it. If Europe will do like in something I know very well, which is aerospace, when Europe said, you know, Boeing 98% of the market, we will do something together, which is called Airbus, and we will make it. So if Europe will do the same, Of course, it's a different environment, a different industry altogether, but the idea is very much the same. Then Europe will make it. No one in Europe, even being big, can make it alone. When the President of the United States has announced the fastest supercomputer of the world, didn't say, and Alabama will build the fastest supercomputer of the world, you would have laughed. So I'm afraid it's very much the same. Things like supercomputing, things like cloud, Internet of Things, are outside the scale of a single member state. And imagine if autonomous car would have 28 different software to be produced. Nightmare. So Europe can make it in digital and can make it because, of course, we have still the best intellectual capital, we have the high technology, we have all to make it. And take our innovation hubs in terms of startups of London, of Berlin, of Paris. I mean, they are now world class. So we can make it, but we have to start from scratch, from the basis. That's why we presented this package on the 18th of April. There's no a single piece of legislation. It's about building supercomputers, investing in quantum technology. It's about launching the next generation of Internet. The next generation of Internet project in which we will really invest an important part of our research and development budget, it will be completely open to new ideas. So we'll start with an enormous phase of co-creation, public consultation, and everyone that has an idea to contribute can and will be able to send it to the European Commission, to the international community, and then we will try and foster all the best ideas about how the Internet is going to be in the next 10 years. So by starting from the basis, starting from, let's say, the knowledge that we have to catch up, I'm sure in 10 years, if we work together, we might maybe win the World Cup.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. Thank you very much. It's a very good speech for us. Very good. And now I would start talking about business. And we don't like digital only because we love digital, but also because it's very important. It's the most important drive for economic growth. So Tech City is accelerating businesses. It's a very good experiment, a best practice of what you can do with digital and businesses in London. And so now, welcome Gerard, Grech.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You would like me to talk about Tech City, is that right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. So for those of you who may not be familiar with this organization, we are a UK government-backed organization, and we complement that with private sponsorship money too. And what we do are three things. We are here to accelerate the growth of digital businesses in London and across the UK, and we put programs in place to help businesses grow at all stages of their development. So we have an online academy that helps startup founders in garages, bedrooms, piazzas, wherever, to start a business. Secondly, we have a program called Upscale, which is a mentoring program for entrepreneurs to really help grow their business. So they're turning over about £1 million a year. And we put them in touch with world-class entrepreneurs like Nicholas Zenstrom, the founder of Skype, or Brad Felt, the founder of Techstars. And later, at a later stage, we have a program for Stage B round-funded companies we call the Future 50. These are companies that are turning over £3 million per year. So we have support programs for businesses at all stages of their development, which is very important. Number two is policy engagement. We engage entrepreneurs, make sure that we give them a voice into government. And we do this by convening policymakers at all levels of government, whether it's national or local, with entrepreneurs. We are here to facilitate that dialogue, which is a very key ingredient to the growth of any digital economy. And number three is we advocate. We advocate on behalf of entrepreneurs. We need the next generation of entrepreneurs and our young students to have role models to look up to in Europe. And that's what we try and do as much as possible. So we started as an organization back in 2010. It was launched by the UK Prime Minister called David Cameron. And at the time, it was there to shine a light on East London, a place called Tech City, where at the time were about 200 software companies. Now there are about 2,500 software companies of all sorts, app developers, there are lots of designers, programmers, coders, and there is a critical mass of expertise in software development. But the reality is that actually we have found that the digital tech economy is not only there in East London, it's actually across the whole of London and across other cities around the UK. And when we looked at the statistics, we found that the digital tech economy is growing 32% faster than the rest of the wider economy. And it's probably very likely that it's happening here in Italy as well. I don't know if you have data and stats that show that, but the digital tech economy is having quite a tremendous effect, as we all know, on traditional industries. And to that point, there are 1.56 million people working in the digital tech economy in the UK today, 41% of whom are in non-digital industries, such as the public sector, such as education, such as transformation. And these are very important people because they are helping to transform these industries to be even more productive, which will contribute to a more prosperous economy. And finally, I will just say that when we've looked at the total turnover contribution of the digital tech economy in the UK over the last, in 2014, which is the latest data, so that's one of the big things that I have with government right now is how can we get this data out there and be as real time as possible, but I can understand the challenges with that sort of thing because there's a lot of rigor that goes with this data, is that it contributed £161 billion in 2014. So this is, so when we look at the digital tech economy, we think of indigenous digital businesses that we all take for granted, but it's very, very tech. And then we look at businesses that are helping transform existing traditional industries. And yes, there are similarities and parallels between the two, but actually there are needs that are different. And being more informed as government, being more informed as a tech community, we can contribute more.
Very quick, but very, very interesting. So there is digital business, and then there is the transformation of traditional business in the digital world. That's as important. And so for this, I would leave the stage to Stefano Quintarelli. Before Sandro Gozi was mentioning the fact that we just celebrated in Italy the 30th anniversary of the first internet connection in 1986, and Stefano was already there working and tinkering with the networks and connections. He's a pioneer. He has been living, not working, living all his life, putting together business, legislation and innovation, and now he's leading the steering committee of the Italian Digital Agency. Stefano.
Thank you very much, Riccardo, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure also because having spent such a long part of my life as a manager and director of BT Group, well, I feel myself right at home being Italian and having worked within BT. As Riccardo mentioned, I now am the chairman of the steering committee of Italian Digital Agency, and I believe that, I think that what we are doing there is trying to facilitate, as Baroness Neville said before, the fact that the public administration becomes an enabler to foster growth for SMEs, and we have defined a strategic model for the development of our information system in public administration, which basically allows private companies, and so startups and private entities, to compete in the market, leveraging services, back-end services offered by public administration. So effectively, private entities will be able to compete delivering public administration services, public administration related services to the public. And that for my role of chairman of the Italian Digital Agency. But more than that, I now sit in the parliament. Mothers of Life brought me to the parliament, and I have a broader view than just public administration, of course. I think that we have a lot to do in order to be able to promote the growth of the startup and scale-up ecosystem in Italy. We are lagging far behind the UK, let alone the United States. The total invested capital here is orders of magnitude less than what is elsewhere. So we have a lot to do there. I saw that Stefano Firpo has just left. Stefano Firpo is now working at the Prime Minister's office, so he's doing a great job trying to promote new regulations in order to help companies. We need more liquidity, we need more incentive to exits, we need to help these communities' growth. We have to facilitate growth. It was mentioned before that we have a significant challenge, which is mostly a cultural challenge. Baroness Neville said before that the digital is a component of everything now. I prefer to call it a dimension because it's not a substitute. It's like length is not a substitute to depth. They are both there. So it's a dimension, and it's not only a dimension of our economic activity, but it's also a dimension of our social activity. And this is the kind of cultural change that we need to push forward, to make everybody understand that this is just a dimension, something that somehow or another, some way or another, all relationships, all commercial activities, all products have. And effectively, the digital, the immaterial dimension, as I call it, has become in a very short time frame the user interface for social and economic relationships. So it's the user interface of social and economic relationship, this immaterial dimension. I believe that us in our role as members of the parliament, we need to make aware all colleagues of this, and we need to try to promote regulations that ensure that there is a vibrant competition so that companies, European companies, can compete not only for the markets, but also in the markets. So we have regulations. Roberto was mentioning before. We need to be very careful. We must not, as we say in Italy, throw the baby with the water. But this is a very Italian joke. We need to allow companies to grow and to foster growth, and also to make sure that companies can compete. This is a very difficult task that Europe is, and Roberto in particular, is facing. We need to foster competition in the market as well. I am convinced of this, not only for economic reasons, but also for social issues. Think about the recent issues about the moderation of topics by Facebook. The new privacy regulation introduces the concept of profile portability, and I believe that that's a right step in favor of user and customer contestability. In all fields, economic fields, we have rules in order to foster competition in the markets by ensuring that customers can be contended. I believe that we need to work in the immaterial dimension also for this. It's a very difficult thing to balance with the need we have for growth. We need to win the championships and the championship, as Roberto said before, and we need a very good set of rules for the championship to be played. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano. So we are already running a few minutes late, but I would take the opportunity to make a few more questions to our panelists before ending this session. The first one is for Baroness Neville-Rolfe. In Italy, we have like around more than 20 million people who never use the internet. It's the highest number in Europe. How did UK address the problem of digital skills? How could you win the challenge?
There's push and there is pull. And I think the pull is the digital offer that people want to, our phones, our televisions, the digital opportunities, which we will talk about at longer length. And the opportunity is everywhere now, in services, in industry, which is one of the reasons why I think Europe can catch up with wider world digital growth, because we can bring the digital into other areas, from healthcare to space to electronics. And then the other thing is the push. And the push means the training and education system, primarily for me. We have now started in our schools, and I think I heard from the Minister that Italy was doing the same. My granddaughter, who is 5, is doing coding in her first year at school. We've had a lot of digital skills training right through the curriculum, often sponsored actually by big companies like BT, which you mentioned. And then where we have a big new apprenticeship program. So since our government was elected, we've moved to having a levy to pay for apprenticeships, and an important part of that retooling and reskilling will be digital. And then finally, there is digital growth by companies. So I came from a big multinational, which was in the consumer area, and digital was actually in our spinal cord, because we realized that that could improve the efficiency of how we operated our company. So everybody having computers and little PDFs on the shop floor. And where you've got opportunity, people make money, there is more rollout. So it's the push and the pull. And I'd like to just reiterate the point the Minister made at the start, which is that we want business behind this. Because although government can provide essential infrastructure, as they did on electricity and railways in their time, you actually need the private sector too.
And now for Sandro Gozi, who was representing the Italian government today, and he started remembering about Digital Venice, which was the opening event of the Italian European semester. So just to focus how important digital is for the government agenda. But you think we are doing enough on the digital side?
No, of course we are not doing enough, because we start from almost the very bottom, as you rightly mentioned. So this is why we have identified the digital dimension as a priority in different action of our government. First, we need resources, and this is why in the new EU funds planning 2014-2020, the digital issues is at the very top of the agenda, starting from the smart cities to arrive to the digital skills. Second, it is clear that we need to invest much more on education and training. In the Buona Scuola, the digital is very prominent, and this is exactly what we need to do to speed up and also to fill the gap that we have irresponsibly accumulated in the previous years in the digital industry and in the digital training sector. Third, infrastructure, because it is clear that there is already a unbearable gap between urban areas and suburban and the country areas, but also within the urban areas we cannot say that we are always fully satisfied with connectivity and so on. So also to have identified infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and as a priority, and to aim at to cover 100% of talking about 30 MPS by 2020, it is something which is certainly very ambitious, but absolutely necessary, because we want to create the best possible environment for all our citizens, but also we want to create the best possible environment for our startups. And from this perspective, I think that Italy is not doing that bad. We have 5,600, more than 5,600 startups registered last year. They are mainly concentrated in 3 regions, Lombardia, Emilia-Romagna, and Lazio, but I mean, there are, I would say that in 10 provinces around Italy, there is a very good presence of startups. It is clear that we have to accompany this, and the minimum to do to accompany this is to provide infrastructure and to provide the training for the people they want to hire. And I'm sure that the startups means also to create new jobs. And this is why we have identified the digital challenge also as one of the major instruments and tools to fight against unemployment, and notably against youth unemployment. And this is another reason. It is clear that we need future-proof legislation. And this is why we are very determined in promoting, first and foremost, a European agenda, European regulation, because we don't need to create, by trying to do a good things, creating new obstacles to our entrepreneur, first. Second, because it is clear that in all the opportunities of this new digital dimension, which this new digital dimension is creating, you need a minimum 11 playing field, which must be at European level. Not only for the activity directly connected to a startup or a traditional manufacturing industry, but also for issues like collaborative economy. It is clear that on that you need to fight against the legal uncertainty, which is blocking the development of these new kind of activities. You need to tackle the several legal dimensions, and this is why we are very keen in promoting first a European regulation. Last but not least, it is clear that as it is a new dimension of the real economy, we cannot tolerate too strong differences in terms of taxation between what is produced by this real economy as a digital product and what is produced by this real economy as real product. This is why we have opened a discussion with the European Commission also on e-book, because a book is a book. And if you tax a book like the one Quintarelli gave us, which wasn't an e-book, was a paper book today. But certainly there is an e-book. You can send me the e-book, of course. If you tax his paper book 4%, you cannot tax his e-book, which is going to send me today by 22% of VAT. This is exactly the kind of battle which are very difficult because of many reasons, because you need unanimity, but which are the issues, the battle to do if we want to reach those goals, which we can reach as European, to be leader and not follower in the digital economy.
Very good. Now we have like 3 more minutes. I would ask Roberto Viola a very journalistic question now. I am a journalist. So like 2 weeks ago we were in Pisa celebrating the Italian Internet Day, the first Italian Internet Day, and we were all expecting the Prime Minister to sign the bill to bring the broadband, the ultra broadband, to every single city in Europe, in Italy, within the year 2020. And actually it didn't happen. It was quite disappointing for us. So usually in the newspaper we write because we are waiting for an approval from Brussels. There is another approval from Brussels we are waiting for?
With the permission of the UK speakers, this question deserves an answer in Italian. Il piano presentato dall'Italia è al momento all'esame della Commissione Europea e servono alcuni passaggi per completare l'esame che dipendono dall'Italia. Quindi l'Europa fa in fretta se l'Italia fa in fretta. Abbiamo dato la disponibilità di lavorare in parallelo e di accelerare il più possibile l'approvazione del piano e questo faremo. La responsabilità è della DG Concorrenza, del commissario Vestager, ma ovviamente il commissario Oettinger e la DG Connect stanno seguendo con grande attenzione il tema. Quindi sono sicuro che i tempi saranno brevi, ma ci vuole lavoro di squadra. Abbiamo anche detto che ci sono tanti passaggi che possono andare avanti. L'unica cosa che naturalmente non può essere fatta è quella di spendere fondi comunitari senza l'approvazione della Commissione Europea, ma tutti i passaggi preliminari possono essere messi in pista. Quindi questo tempo che manca, che spero sia il più breve possibile, può comunque essere utilmente speso per tutte le attività preparatorie, per la predisposizione dei bandi, l'avvio delle procedure. Quello che ovviamente non si può fare è arrivare al punto finale. Quindi c'è tanta strada che si può fare. E per quanto riguarda la direzione è senz'altro favorevole, però siccome viviamo in un ambiente pluralistico, ci sono stati alcuni soggetti che hanno fatto presente alcune cose alla Commissione Europea, la Commissione Europea ha dovuto approfondire il tema, ha chiesto approfondimenti all'Italia, l'Italia si è impegnata, ha fatto tutti i passaggi necessari e deve fare ancora alcune piccole cose e quindi arriveremo presto alla fine di questo iter.
Okay, thank you very much. For me it was not good news. We have to wait a little bit more, a little bit longer. I think now Stefano Quintarelli, I know you wanted to say something about what Sandro Gozi said, but maybe it's very interesting to point out the difference between the digital identity system in Italy and the UK, because in Italy it just started a couple of months ago. It's called SPID, and it's very important. It's a critical infrastructure for us, and there is a very interesting difference with the system in UK. Probably Stefano is the best person to mention it.
Yes, thank you. Well, yes, first I wanted to make a comment on what Mr. Gozi said before. We need to take into consideration, also, and I speak as a member of the parliament, also consumers, because it's true that a book is a book, but we need to factor in consumers, because once you move from a book to an e-book, rights are not the same. So I can give away a book, I can lend it, but I cannot do it with an e-book, because there are no rules for interoperability so that I can have my e-book lent to you and you give it back to me. So the set of rules is different. We need to take into account also that. But that was just a quick comment. About, yes, the strategic program, the strategic model we have approved, and effectively we are implementing, and we are in a very good position implementing it. We have the concept, we introduced the concept of immaterial infrastructure, so that's quite new in the Italian public administration. And basically the idea is that once you make a service, well, you reuse it as a service, not as code. So basically we started sharing archiving function, we are going to share notification functions, and in the UK there is a program which is called Notify, similar. We have a single payment hub where all public administration and payment service providers can plug into, an invoicing hub where 99-point-something% of all invoices by public administrations flow through. And another material infrastructure very important is the infrastructure for digital identity. We started building that 3 years ago, and you know, we are under civil law and not common law, and that has some implications. I won't enter in too much detail about that, but this is the major difference between our system and the UK one. So we started basically, effectively, the deployment 1 year after the UK, and we have very encouraging figures now. The very important thing about the SPID, the Italian System for Public Identification Authentication, is that it forces the fact that all databases in all administrations rely on the same primary keys, so that you can connect to the different database and effectively build integrated systems, which is something that we could not do before, because we have different primary keys for the same person's data. And that, in conjunction with the fact that the private sector can access the back ends of the public administration, I believe it's going to be a significant opportunity for Italian startups, and perhaps help us to overcome the gap and maybe make a little jump forward. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to end this panel. Before we have final remarks by Gerard, Grech about Ford Drive, important to understand better Tech City.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I think we get asked this question a lot by many foreign governments about what drove the success of Tech City as a startup hub. Just to put that into context, 43% of all tech unicorns, these are $1 billion valued companies, are based in the UK. A substantial of those are based in London, but that's spreading. And there are 4 key drivers that I see. There are many drivers and there are many contributing factors to the success of any startup hub, but four that really stand out. One that's already been talked about by many people on this panel. One is obviously talent. If you don't have the talent, you don't have the investment. And talent comes from a number of places, whether it's universities, colleges of further education, colleges of higher education, or whether there are startup communities that really start from local places where people get together. That's one. Number 2 is smart capital. So not just capital, but smart capital. Capital that is invested by investors that know how to build a business. So this is actually the difference between the funds that we have seen in the past and the funds that we are seeing now. We are seeing many more funds that are being started and built by past founders and entrepreneurs that really know how to build a business. And this is what we call smart capital. Number 3 is infrastructure. So we have space, office space, but places that local government or national government can provide for startups to get together. Broadband infrastructure, but also connectivity in terms of transport, whether it's airports or train stations. Now, in the digital sector, I would say that startup hubs are very much in the center of cities, not on the outskirts of cities. And there's a number of reasons for that. Research has shown that actually ideas that move very quickly tend to be in very cultural places where there's a lot of activity, where your idea can be challenged a lot before it's refined and taken to market. And finally, the big one, which I think is being talked about today a lot, is political leadership. And political leadership really stems from how open is our institutions, not just government, but institutions, in understanding this space. So the London Stock Exchange is one institution that has really evolved very quickly in the last 2 to 3 years. In fact, they even took the Borsa Elite program, which is based in Milan, to help family businesses, but also other types of businesses grow and get to their next liquidity event as quickly as possible. And that is what I see fantastic example of best practice sharing between the Italian Borsa and the London Stock Exchange, and we want to see a lot more of that. And I think it's how open are established institutions to allow this sort of startup or innovation culture to really open up and unleash more potential. You could argue that actually before the Apple iPhone and the Apple Store was invented, there were lots and lots of developers. But what happened? Apple, with its scale, just like governments with their scale, looked at how to open up the door to even more, so many more developers. And I think they really looked at the whole system of how a developer would make money, which unleashed a next wave of developers and innovation. So I think it's this is where political leadership comes in, which is how open are institutions to allow them to engage with entrepreneurs and not just do it for photo opportunities, but actually really get behind what entrepreneurs are saying and make sure that they have a voice into these institutions. And not talk about disruption, but talk about enablement. Enablement so that these established industries can be so much more productive with this new technology. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much. So no more photo opportunities. I would give a warm round of applause for our panel.